As a critical scholar-practitioner, Dr. Whitaker holds multiple academic roles, including Associate Professor and Director of the M.Ed, an educational leadership program at Arcadia University. At Arcadia, he also serves as the co-director of the Social Action and Justice Education SAJE program. Further, Dr. Whitaker is an inaugural faculty fellow for Vanderbilt University's Initiative for Race, Research, and Justice. Known for his extensive research, Dr. Whitaker frequently presents at national and international conferences exploring the topics such as race, racism, white supremacy, social justice, organizational psychology, the plight of black males, and the Prophetic Black Church tradition. Over the past 8 years, he has authored and presented more than 40 scholarly works on these critical issues.
Welcome to De-Stress 302. I'm your host, Alena, and today we are here with
Dr. Ron Whitaker. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you.
Let's dive right in. Can you tell us about your mental health journey?
Okay, so as shared, my name is Dr. Ron Whitaker, and I have many different roles as a faith leader, as a college professor, and as a community leader. And my mental health journey has been, just as the words would suggest, a journey. Unfortunately, I've come from a context that mental health was not talked about in a positive manner. We would use terms such as someone is crazy or someone has quote unquote issues. And as I started to progress, particularly through my educational journeys, I learned that, you know what, it's normal to say that I'm not doing okay. But that took me up into my adulthood life to really get comfortable with that. So as we're talking about a journey, I'm still, evolving, even though mental health is something that's near and dear to my heart, something that I center not just in my life, but in my practice. I'm also on a crusade to make mental health something that is not taboo, particularly within urban communities.
How does your role as senior pastor of the historic Mother African Union Church involve mental health?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, there is this tension between faith and mental health counseling. To be specific, some people would argue if you have faith in whoever you worship, then why would you need a mental health therapist? The context that I pastor in is predominantly African American. So that brings a whole different layer of challenges, meaning that oftentimes, as shared, we don't talk about the need for mental health support within the Black church. But then there's also some legitimate reasons why some people may shun mental health counseling, specifically not trusting therapists because perhaps they feel as though they're not culturally competent or really trusting or authentic in the therapeutic process. So my role right now is to, number one, create a safe space that it's okay to come into our church, to be a part of our community, even if you say, hey, I have strong faith, but I also need a counselor. I have strong faith, but yet I need a support group. I have strong faith, but yet I may need to take some medication for a season. So my job is to create a safe space with my leaders, but then also they need to hear it from me, right? Our members and our community leaders, they just can't think that I have it all together. So there has to be vulnerability in my role too, in saying that, you know what, the same support that you may need, I'm on the same journey also.
Yeah. Your role seems to primarily focus on Black men's mental health. How do you work to overcome the stigma that is really prevalent in this particular community?
Yeah, I mean, that is work that unfortunately is going to take decades to even scratch the surface in terms of really getting to the point of equity. When we talk about African American males, we're talking about a population that unfortunately has experienced both historic and contemporary challenges and trauma. So number one, we have to just have real and honest conversation. Sometimes we have to name it so that we can properly frame it. Then we also have to deal with the stigma of what it means to be a man, right? There is a leader in the New York area, and he has a theory that's called the man box. And he argues that, unfortunately, and this goes across racial ethnic lines, he argues that a lot of men have been socialized to believe that you have to be tough, you have to be strong, you can't be a punk, you have to dominate, you have to show that you're in control, because those are the things that are in the man box. And he says anything else outside of the man box, when you don't exert those sorts of attributes, now people are looking at you as less than a man. So we have to have these real honest conversations in terms of, well, what is manhood, and what does it really mean to be a man, and who taught you about manhood, and how were you socialized? So oftentimes we also have to buck up against those societal and cultural norms that may be just straight wrong in terms of what manhood is, and we have to get to the point of healing from whatever traumas we may have experienced, but then also now be in an authentic relationship with one another, to be very real and honest and vulnerable, and sharing that perhaps you may need help, or perhaps you don't know everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a big emphasis, like you said, on men being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
What is your advice to men who would struggle with vulnerability, or sort of being stuck in the mindset of that box of sticking in it?
Yeah. One of the things is, I understand it takes time. So number one, I have to exercise patience. Some of my leaders that are helping me with this work, we understand it's not going to happen overnight, because one of the things that's very important in the therapeutic process, not just one-on-one, but also in the group settings, is trust, right? And individuals struggle with trust. So whatever sorts of success that we may be having, we're going to celebrate that, right? Even if someone just shares one thing about their life or one struggle, we're going to celebrate that, and we're hoping that that will lead to other conversations. But as you shared, we also have to be very proactive. So we're working with young males that hopefully can get the message on the front end, so that we're not waiting until we're in our 20s, our 30s, or catch this. Even sometimes I have men that are part of our Monday night group, which we call Monday Night Raw. They're in their 60s and 70s and still struggling with just saying, I need help. We have some men, 60, 70, they haven't cried in decades, right? Yeah. Because they have been taught that if you cry as a man, you're weak, and men don't cry. As a matter of fact, I love my father, right? He is perhaps the most brilliant man that I have ever known. But my father comes from a generation in a space where he taught me that men don't cry, right? So I'm still getting over some of those messages myself, even though I'm on the front lines in terms of this advocacy for mental health. Yeah. So it takes time. It's very complex, but we just have to curate the environment and hope that within that environment, people feel a little bit more comfortable to unpack the different layers that they have, been carrying for so long.
Mm-hmm. To the point of raising them to have this sort of mindset, what would you say to parents who want to raise their kids with sort of a mental health awareness, especially sons? Mm-hmm. And this can be sort of advice to either fathers or mothers.
Correct.
It could be Correct. Different depending.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. As you said, I don't think that it's a gender thing, or even those that may not have a gender identity. I think it's just a conversation that we need to have, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of, we have to, number one, deal with our own hurts and our own trauma, whether that's from family, whether that's from society, whether that's from institutions. And I would argue that everyone needs to go through their healing process. There is a great mental health leader. Her name is Dr. Tamar Bryant. She has a book that's titled Homecoming. So for the audience, I highly recommend that you get the book Homecoming. And she argues that every individual, or many individuals, I should say, were fighting to go back home. meaning to go back to that place where you felt joy, where you felt peace, where you felt safe, where you didn't have to feel as though you had to protect yourself with different layers. And the argument is that life will cause you to get away from your authentic being. So for mothers, for fathers, for grandparents, I think it's important that, number one, before you're on the front lines trying to say this is what my child or my grandchild needs, I think it's also important that they're going through their own healing and making sure that their language is one that invites people in, that they're inclusive, and that they're not passing on their trauma to the next generation. Yes.
What are some common ways that people mask the pain that they go through, either in public or with their loved ones, to sort of, the ways that they cover it?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many ways, I mean, when we're talking about men, are those that are individuals that identify as males. I'm all right. I don't need your help. I got this together, right? I don't need nobody. That could be one way. Perhaps there's hypersexuality. Perhaps there's other addictions, whether that's drinking or taking pills. Perhaps it's just numbing yourself from the pain. Perhaps it's running away from anything that may feel like an argument. It may not even be an argument, but because of trauma, I'm going to run, right? That whole fight or flight mentality. So there are so many different ways that individuals mask their pain, and that's why it's important that we, again, go back to creating spaces where we can unpack the layers so that we can really get to the place of healing and authenticity.
Would you like to share personally a time when you had hid your struggles, or sort of where you come from in your own experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's such a rich question. You asked about my journey, and again, that's 5 episodes. You don't want to have me for 5 episodes, right? But my high school years was a time of trauma. My parents were engaged in a separation, which ultimately led to a divorce. There were addictions in my family. As such, I dealt with a lot of different struggles: housing insecurities, food insecurities, just masking pain. So even though I may go to family functions or show up at school, I was numb, and I was a shell of myself, withdrawn. Academics dipped huge, right? I go from during my elementary years, honor roll, and getting all sorts of accolades and opportunities, to now this high school year where I didn't even care about academics. I was just trying to survive. There were times that, and I grew up in Philadelphia, where I had to catch public transportation to get to school. There were times where, I would wait for my mother to leave the house. I would then walk out with her and catch the train and say I'm going to school, and wait till she got off, a couple stops later, and then I would get off and go back home, right? Because I just wanted to run away. I didn't want to be around anyone. So when I look at that particular period in my life, I think that's why you're seeing Dr. Ron Whitaker today, because that same child, or teenager, I should say, but child, in many ways, emotionally and mentally, that same individual is why I'm here and why I'm so passionate about this work, because it's not just theoretical, it's practical. And I told the institutions, one in particular, the University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League institution, where I received my graduate training in counseling psychology, I told them, if you admit me into this institution, I'm going to be the best student that I can be. But I'm telling you, all of the information I'm going to get, I'm taking it back to communities that do not have the information. And thankfully, I'm able to do that work.
Yeah. What was the point that really inspired you to take the struggles of your life and you said you looked into, looking into your mental health and studying psychology and sort of turning point? Yeah.
So I will say this, and again, I'm not advocating for a particular faith tradition. but spirituality was very important to me. And spirituality is nuance, right? When I listen to music, different genres of music, that's spirituality to me. When I just walk and when I experience culture, that's spirituality to me. When I go into institutions where there's a common, some common dynamics in terms of how we worship, that's spirituality to me. So I think that during my early 20s, I started to see this reawakening in terms of who I authentically was created to be. We're talking about homecoming. But then not only that, there was this passion now to take all of these internal feelings and make sure that I had the marketable credentials, the degrees, so that I could really make change. So that's really what was the turning point in my life. Spirituality, but experiencing spirituality in so many diverse ways.
Yeah, I can definitely even relate to a personal level. I'm a very spiritual, religious person, and I find it really helps me stay grounded.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why do you think so many people feel the need to appear okay even when they're not?
Yeah. I mean, let's just go here. And obviously this is off, but let's look at this, right? So many people are lied to or feel like they have to compete with social media because, even on social media, we put our best version out there. We post the times that perhaps we're on the trip, or perhaps we're in our best outfit, or maybe something great happened and we want to post that. And if we're bombarded with all of these messages of success, all of these messages of having it all together, and then perhaps now there's competition with friends, our family circle, and then let's just be honest, even in our educational institutions, and I want to assume goodwill that is coming from a great place, but you need your education in what? Be successful, right? So because all of these messages of success, no one wants to share that, hey, I'm hurting. I don't have it all together. Or, you know what? Even though I should be happy, I'm not happy, right? And there are so many people that are struggling. As shared, I was fortunate to attend an Ivy League institution, and you had individuals in that Ivy League institution that had no sense of happiness. Individuals within that institution struggling with suicidal ideation. Why? Because, again, I'm here and I'm supposed to be successful. And I'm here and my father was here and my grandfather was here and I'm a part of legacy. So I have to continue the family tradition. So we have to now get to the point across institutions, across neighborhoods, where we center mental health and we say, just as important as it is for you to go get your oil change every 3,000 miles, to go to the doctors every year for your annual checkup, to go to the dentist every 6 months, it's the same way we have to center our mental and our emotional health. Yeah.
Regarding social media, what are some first steps that we can take, we as, people, teens, young adults or adults who are often on social media but don't really know how to improve the mixed messaging and sort of the mess and the spiral that can happen with that?
Here's what I want to suggest, and I don't want to just demonize social media. There are so many people that would say this is just bad, everyone needs to get away. I don't want to do that because there are so many great opportunities that can also come from social media. But I would say this regarding your question: we have to be critical consumers of social media, right? There are some things that may be triggering to us, and we don't have to engage in it. Even sometimes, and it's funny because there have been at least 3 or 4 times that I wanted to jump in the comment section when something was going on and I just felt like someone got it all wrong, and I typed up my message and immediately I'm like, don't send it, because if I send it, then I'm going to get 2,500 people who are trolling me. And you look at them, they have no profile, no followers, but now they're calling me the most egregious names in the world, and it's getting personal. And what is that going to do to me, right? So even in those moments, I have to literally police myself, like in terms of, is this good for me or is this ultimately bad for me? So when we're talking about the critical consumption, that's what I will put to everyone, right? In terms of, if you're having a moment of, pain, perhaps you may need to step away from something that may be triggering. But conversely, if you're having a moment of happiness, be in the moment, right? How many times do we go to a restaurant and someone brings out great food and no one can enjoy because they're looking at the food and they have to get the perfect picture of the food, or they're on a vacation and they can't fully enjoy the vacation because I have to get the perfect moment. So I also think that it's very important for us to just police ourselves even in those moments of happiness, to be in it and to enjoy it, and don't feel as though you have to video every aspect of your life.
Yeah, I find I have to sometimes consciously take into account and put in my forward attention of like that social media is such a toxic filter, because all of the negative things are what gets popular, and so it looks like there's more negativity than there really is, or like if you're not really thinking about like the like to comment ratio, and you see like a lot of negative comments when the actual likes of the video far outweigh, and so it's sort of this like I said, like a filter that really and can affect sort of the way that you view any information that is given to you on social media. So I've tried to take into my attention to sort of notice that pattern. And another part is like we film PSAs here of just swipe up, and it's like it sounds so simple. But really it's an improvement of like before you get angry, before you react, think of how you want to respond. Just swipe up.
Right. And I think also the other thing too, and I appreciate that, for those that are in professional spaces, we also have to have those real conversations with younger generations in terms of even the professional implications. So taking off my faith leader hat and now putting on my professional hat as a university leader, trust and believe. If you're admitted into the college, or if we're looking at a scholarship, we're looking at your social media, right? We are doing those in-depth looks in terms of what did you like? Did you repost something that perhaps goes against our mission and our values? So there also has to be some sort of professional protection that we put in place in terms of the real implications that can happen if we're not using social media the right way.
Sort of veering off of like the social media topic, what are the warning signs that someone might be silently suffering?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think that for everyone it's going to look differently, but I think some of the warning signs is just knowing that someone is off, whatever that means. For someone that may take pride in their appearance, and you see that their appearance is starting to really go to a different place, perhaps that's a warning sign. For someone that loves different family traditions or outings with their friends, but yet they're withdrawn, perhaps that is a warning sign. For someone that is oftentimes even killed, but now they're very hyper, whether that's hyper angry or just snappy, perhaps that is a warning sign. So again, it's going to look different because we're different as individuals. However, I would argue, particularly for those that are friends or family members or perhaps part of a team, this is why it's important to, number one, have these conversations, but to build relationships so that we can see, if someone is off. Within my own community, every holiday season that we celebrate, it's both a celebration, but it's also a time of check-in. Because as some are celebrating, perhaps Thanksgiving, or let's just say the Christmas season, it's not a season of joy, right? Because perhaps they lost a loved one, or perhaps there's some trauma that's associated with those particular holidays. So we're also very hyper vigilant during those seasons so that we could do the proper check-ins and making sure that we're taking care of one another as humans.
What are the biggest barriers you see in accessing quality mental health care in your community?
Yeah. There's a lot. Number one, as shared, and I know that these are difficult conversations in these days, but there's a lot of historical trauma that's associated with Black and brown communities as it pertains to mental health support, medical support. It's not just oftentimes people reference one or two studies. It's more than that. There are countless studies that unfortunately has been enacted on vulnerable communities. So we do have to deal with the historical trauma that oftentimes still plays up in contemporary ways. Number two, related to that is the cultural, the lack of cultural competence in terms of not being familiar with, different communities, not really centering cultural or the cultural dynamics in the therapeutic process. And I think that that's very important. Number three, as we share, we're bucking up against messages, the quote unquote, we don't tell the family business. I'm sure you've heard that from other guests. We keep this in-house. Our business is our business, right? So we have to buck up against some of that sort of stuff too, that, if someone has been hurt or something has happened, that we keep that to ourselves. We don't keep that to ourselves because that's trauma that's going to be recapitulated in different ways. And I think number four is, as shared, it's just messaging. Oftentimes people, think it's funny. I was just playing, you were playing when you called this person a name that is really a microaggression. And there's nothing micro about microaggressions because they have macro level impact, right? Mm-hmm. So saying, I come from a time and my family's from the South, that such and such is cuckoo, or, they just got issues. They were dropped on their head. All of those things are very damaging. So the language is very important too, the messaging, how we communicate. So those are just some initial pieces that we're still fighting against.
Mm-hmm. And I guess sort of, because that goes also right into my next question of why that is. How does race, culture, or immigration status affect someone's willingness to seek help?
Yeah, I think, as you said, it's hand in hand. There are, for every, culture, there are different norms, different ways of engagement, and it can be very complicated. Hence why it's important that those that are sitting in the seat that I occupy, that your educational journey is ongoing. You never arrive. I could share the degrees that I have, the certifications that I have, and really that means nothing if I'm not treating people with the dignity and the respect that they need. So that means that I'm constantly learning. That also means that I'm operating from a place of humility, right? Where if I'm invited into certain communities, I'm not the expert. I'm there to learn, and to learn not in an exploitative way, but learn in a way that really builds relationship. So that's very important for mental health professionals. But on the other side, as shared, let's not also assume that it comes necessarily from a bad place. Sometimes it's a place of protection. Unfortunately, because many individuals, vulnerable individuals in communities, they have been exploited. I've been a part of universities, and they have research teams, and they will go to certain communities and say they're there to help. They're not there to help. They're there to get data, to use the people, and after they publish their report and write their book, they're gone, and they're going on to the next one. And that hurts people. So as such, some individuals have found ways to protect themselves and not to let anyone else in.
How can we create safe spaces for people in the community to be able to be vulnerable?
Yeah. Well, I think it's aligned with the work that you're doing, right? No one person or one organization has all of the answers, but all of us are a part of the solution. So I think when we hear diverse perspectives in terms of what can work, what has been working within our context, I think it inspires all of us to do our part in terms of the healing process. So conversations are very important. But it just cannot be conversations. I would argue that conversations need to then go to tangible changes, right? In terms of the ways that we are training up school psychologists and school therapists, the ways that we are training any mental health professional, making sure that, again, whether that's cultural competence, whether that is data that does not pathologize certain individuals and communities, very important. But then number 3, we have to get to policy, right? If we really want the resources in our communities, we need policy changes. So we have to hold our elected officials accountable for doing the job that they say that they were going to do when they were elected. That's number 1, holding them accountable, but then also advocating for certain policies that can bring about resources. It's not success if we're getting just one mental health therapist, or we can just fund one mental health therapist. That's not enough. We need to make sure that there are resources that every school, every community center, hospitals, they are not fighting because they don't have the resources to get the support that they need. That comes to policy change.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the conversations is just step 1, and it's
Correct.
a good step and it's a great place to
Yep.
start, but like
Now what?
Yeah, the now what.
Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now
Mhm.
what?
All right. What are some examples of trauma being passed down through generations without people realizing it?
Yeah. Wow. I think, one of the things, particularly in our community, that we are very conscientious of is colorism, right? So within certain African American communities, or those that identify as individuals of African, descent, light skin, dark skin. So the whole colorism piece, very important. Another thing that is very triggering, and there are various debates, particularly from a faith context, is hyper beating. Beating children and making people suffer. You're going to feel this when you get home, and I want you to feel it for the next 5 or 6 days. What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that really helping or hurting?
Mm-hmm.
I think the ways that perhaps the communication dynamics between male and female, calling each other out their name as a form of disrespect. So again, a lot of these are historical traumas that we're still dealing with today.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece is, the relationship between certain communities and those that have authority in the law enforcement, and how that's triggering. So it's multi-layered, it's complex, but all of these things have real life implications.
Mm. In what ways does generational trauma impact someone's mental health?
Oh, good God. In multiple ways. We don't have enough time for that. It impacts in relationships.
Mm.
It impacts in terms of how that individual may parent their own child or children. It impacts in how we see the world, right? I'm just learning to be, again, at the age that I am, to be totally at peace with myself. That, there are times that I just want to walk around and, maybe just enjoy nature, just take in the sun and take in the beauty of nature. I couldn't do that or say that in the neighborhood I grew up in West Philadelphia, right? People would think I'm crazy, or they would try to test me because I had to have a certain posture of strength and toughness, and you're not going to take advantage of me. So just even how we interact with the world, careers that we pursue, all of that has to do with the question that you asked me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it plays out in so many different ways.
And how can someone, as the individual,
Mm-hmm.
start to make progress in breaking that cycle of generational trauma?
Yeah, I think it's courage. Someone
Mm-hmm.
has to just have the courage to say, I'm going to do something different. Even if it's never been done before, I'm going to do something different, even if I'm the only one that has the courage to do something different. So it has to be a willpower to fight for the life that you believe that you were authentically created to have, right? Mm-hmm. That takes courage, that takes strength, but then it also takes separation. Part of the healing process is to separate ourselves from those things that cause trauma and hurt. That may be friend circle, family circle, environmental circle. I have one good friend who, unfortunately, he is, let's just say, on vacation right now. Catch what I'm saying, right? And I'm arguing that after this vacation is over and you are now released back home, I think it's best for you to move. I think it's best for you not to be in the same environment that has caused so much hurt and pain in your life. Being around the same friend circle that really didn't care about your well-being. Hence, if they really cared about your well-being, you wouldn't be on this extended vacation. So sometimes the most courageous and radical thing that we can do is to say, I'm leaving those people behind. For not necessarily I don't like them, they're bad people, they're just not good for me, and they're not good for where I'm going.
Yeah, and that can definitely take a lot of courage to sort of make those big changes that'll really impact. And would you give some examples of what a good environment would look like for someone who wants to sort of break out of the environment that they're in? Yeah,
I think a great environment looks like that space is going to allow you to be who you created to be. And for everybody, that's different. There's about 8 billion people on planet Earth, and for those 8 billion people, that's going to have 8 billion different things. However, being in the context that's going to allow you to be authentically who you are created to be. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Do you have any closing advice for the listeners today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to celebrate you and this great platform for having the conversation. Number 2, closing advice is that it's so important that we learn from one another. Again, you started with my role as a faith leader. One of the things that I have been engaged in the last 2 years with DSAM is on a campaign to do this anti-stigma work, mental health, substance use disorders, to really be on this crusade, not just in my church or in my community, but to say it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say that I need help, that you can still have a faith affiliation and a therapist at the same time. So anti-stigma work is very, very, very important. But the advice that I'm leaving with is we all need to learn from one another. What's working for me may not work for you, but I can share what we're doing that perhaps it can add to your toolkit. But as it's your time to share, I want to be listening ear so that it can enhance all of our work. So the point that I'm making is that the conversation is the starting point so that we can change practices and then change policy. If we can really get to that point, we're going to be okay.
All right. That's all the questions I have for today. I'd like to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And for the listeners, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. De-Stress 302 is a Cause of the World production. This program was produced by members of the Cause production crew. Crew includes Milan Wood, Alana Hernandez. Associate producers are Adam Hubert and Alena Duggan. Produced by Matt Kelly. Our executive producers are Hayat Omar and Dennis Finicaro. This show was brought to you by the 988 Lifeline in Delaware and the Cause. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, alcohol or drug use, is in emotional distress, or just needs someone to talk to, contact 988. 988's trained, caring counselors are ready to listen. Call, text, or chat 988 for free and confidential support, 24/7, 365. You are not alone. Subscribe to De-Stress 302 today.